Okay, I put some holes here. We've got a kind of a big hole, and then we've got a smaller hole over here, along with the two other holes I showed you. So, I'll show you how to deal with these. This is only my second time around, so I'm not worried about this one yet. Now this hole, I can just incorporate it right into where I'm cutting. So if you need to cut a little bigger or a little smaller, just incorporate the hole into how you're cutting. Okay? Let me go around again, and then we'll get to the bigger hole. Okay, I'm about ready to get to the big hole here. Now you'll notice, since it's going wider than my cut here, I'm going to go ahead and cut through it. Okay, now it's holding on by a thread, literally. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Oh my gosh, it's in pieces, right? Well, go ahead and stretch your pieces a little bit, and then you're just going to tie them together, tie a knot. Just like if you had shoelaces, tie a knot. Now, you're going to pull this knot as tight as you can get it. Some are easier than others. And then you're just going to clip the ends. Pretty close. Pretty close. Alright, put those in the scrap bag. Got yourself a little knot here. Believe it or not, this will work into most things that you crochet without showing, or only showing a little bit. So if you don't want any knots, then you would make something small or start your yarn from here. But for right now, we're going to keep this together because you may be able to use the whole thing. Now what's left of that hole is just a notch. So when I cut, I'm going to cut a little above that notch. Well, quite a bit above the notch. Let me show you. So that when I pull on it to make yarn, it won't come apart on me. So it's going to be a little bit wider than what I would normally cut, but not so much. Now when I pull to make the yarn, I'm going to hang on to it and pull on that side and then pull on this side so that I don't pull it apart. You have to remember that. But otherwise, there's no problem with that. Okay, I'm going to keep going around till I get to the next hole, which is even bigger. Okay, I've cut round and round a lot, and I'm coming to the hole. Here's the big old hole. Now, when I went around last time, I had to decide if this was going to be wide enough for 2 strips, and it was, because it was about that wide. So I went ahead and cut, and I looked at here, and this is enough for a strip. So I'm going to go ahead and cut. This is the biggest hole I have. I had to cut a whole logo out because it was just too plastic, creakly crackly. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut like, you know, that hole isn't there, as much as I can. And then just keep going on around. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. Alright, I've come back. Let me finish here. I'm going to stop here because there's 2 ways to do with a hole this big. Well, first thing I have to do is round that corner, just like we did on the last time when you cut the sleeves apart or when you cut the neck apart, around that corner. Okay, so there's two ways to do this. One is a little bulkier than the other, but and that's to turn around here and go back. So if I was to turn around here and go back, that I'd keep going back this way, keeping the width the same. Now this, what you do is you're going to trim it so that it's not so heavy, and since it's still going to be too bulky, you're going to make slits and you're going to make a Y there, but don't go in too far, and a Y there, so that it's easier to stretch. So every time you turn a corner that's real tight like that, you're going to have to do that. Now the other way, if I was coming through on this one, is to just keep cutting, 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 and then just go around. Around. And just follow the hole, the outside of the hole. And what's going to happen with that is you're going to get to the neck part a lot sooner on the back, or the front, on this a lot sooner on one side than you would on the other, because there's no hole on the other side. If you go back and forth like I did with this one, then as soon as you get to the top of the hole, you can go straight again, and it evens out, but you have a lot more bulk. Either way works, either way has its own problems, and you just keep cutting and trying to make a single line. You may have to, if you go with going over the top round and round, you're going to end up going back and forth on the front because you haven't cut as much of it. Or back and forth on the sleeve. It just depends on where you end up. Try and keep a single line going for as long as you can. Now on this one I'm going to cut and try and have one of my cuts here. Then I'm going to go back once, and then my other cuts here. So this is a small enough hole where I don't mind doing that once with the bulky corners. But when the hole's real big, you're either going to have a bunch of bulky corners or you're going to run out on one side more than the other. And V-necks are kind of similar to that. You just keep going as long as you can, and when you get to a problem spot, you just kind of look at it and decide what you're going to do. So I'm going to keep cutting on this one. I'm going to actually go around and go up and over to show you what it looks like when you have less on one side of your neckline and more on the other. I'm also dealing with a 2XL, so I have a lot more room here. This would go faster if you had a smaller shirt. Okay, I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I've gotten around to that small hole again. I was able to cut below it and get a strip. Now, this one isn't so big, so what I'm going to do, instead of turning around and going back, I'm going to round the corners. So that it's smooth, and I'm just going to keep cutting around it like that. For me, that's the easier way and the less bulky way. So we're just going to keep going around on it.